Hey guys, tonight we dive into something deliciously questionable. The kind of thing that smells amazing, tastes even better, and might just shave a few years off your medieval lifespan. You're wandering through a bustling 14th century marketplace where the air is thick with the scent of roasting meat, spiced honey cakes, and a dozen other snacks sizzling in oil that hasn't been changed since last Easter. You probably won't survive this, but at least you'll go with a smile. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step through the gates of a medieval fairground, where chaos, laughter, and hunger blend into one intoxicating rhythm. Drums beat somewhere near the jesting field, but the real battle is between your nose and your self-control. Every booth calls out with promises of sinful delights. Meat pies bubbling in their own fat, fritters dripping with honey, almonds roasted until their sugar crusts crackle like tiny fireworks. The first thing you notice isn't the color or the texture, it's the noise. Food in the Middle Ages wasn't a quiet affair. Vendors shout, cauldrons bubble, and someone's chasing a goose that got loose from the butcher's pen. You dodge a splash of broth as a cook ladles out what looks like stew, but smells suspiciously like old fish and beer. He winks at you and mutters, "Best in town." You nod politely. You're not sure which town he means. For the medieval crowd, this is paradise. Junk food isn't a guilty pleasure. It's a break from endless bread and porridge. Imagine being a farmer living on barley gruel day after day. Then suddenly, there's a fair, and you can buy a stick of meat roasted over an open flame. You'd spend your last copper just to taste salt and fat again. You pass a woman selling wafers, thin crispy discs pressed between metal irons with intricate patterns, sort of like edible stained glass windows. They're flavored with honey and rosewater, a treat you'd normally find in noble halls, but here, she's hawking them to anyone with a coin. Fun fact: wafer sellers were some of the earliest street vendors in Europe, often working right outside churches after Mass. And yes, historians still argue whether those wafers counted as dessert or as holy bread knock-offs. As you move deeper into the fairground, the smells grow darker. More roasted, more charred. Someone's turning a whole pig on a spit, and the fat drips into the fire, creating bursts of smoke that smell like bacon mixed with heaven. You watch as people tear chunks straight off with their hands. There are no forks here, just fingers and shared bites. Hygiene, a luxury of the future. You try a chewat, a small pastry stuffed with minced meat and raisins, wrapped in flaky dough and fried. It's oddly sweet and savory at once, like a medieval experiment that went wrong in the right way. One bite, and you understand why people risked spoiled meat. Because life was short, and flavor was rare. Over by the Al tent, men dunk slices of fried bread into beer, then sprinkle it with sugar and cinnamon. This, apparently, is a nobleman's breakfast gone public. Sugar was still expensive, but a little pinch on street snacks gave them an exotic edge. Like saying, "Look at me, I can afford imported sweetness." A juggler tosses apples dipped in honey, and kids chase after him hoping one might fall. These candied apples are more like toffee bombs, boiled in honey so long they could double as weapons. And yes, sometimes they broke teeth. That's medieval dentistry for you. If it hurts, drink more oil. A group of pilgrims sits by the fountain eating something fried and golden. Fish fritters, supposedly invented as a loophole for fasting rules. They're crisp on the outside, soft inside, and served with a thick sauce made of herbs and vinegar. The church said no meat on certain days, but frying plants, nuts, and fish in oil didn't technically count. Hence, the birth of holy junk food. You can almost hear the monks sighing in satisfaction. Near the center of the fair, there's a booth run by an old woman selling pancakes. Not quite what you're used to. They're thick, uneven, and smell faintly of yeast and smoke. She pours batter onto an iron plate greased with bacon fat, flips it once, then dusts it with crushed sugar if you pay extra. The taste. Like eating a medieval dream. Sweet, salty, and vaguely metallic from the iron. You watch as a group of merchants from Venice haggle over spiced almonds. These are the true rock stars of the market. Imported cinnamon, cardamom, and clove made even simple nuts feel royal. The merchant explains that these spices traveled thousands of miles from Asia, more valuable than gold per ounce. Of course, he neglects to mention that by the time they reach your tongue, they've absorbed half the smells of the ship's cargo hold. Historians still debate how much of this market was about food, and how much was about showing off. A pie with saffron wasn't just lunch. It was a statement that you were worldly, wealthy, and maybe slightly irresponsible with your money. A fiddler plays nearby, and as his tune lilts over the crowd, you realize food here isn't separate from life. It is life. Every smell tells a story. Roasted nuts for the lovers, fried dough for the drunkards, honeyed cakes for the hopeful. You see a mother hand her child a small twist of pastry dusted with ginger. The boy's eyes light up, like it's Christmas in October. You pause by a stall where a man fries gristles, minced meat mixed with eggs, breadcrumbs, and spices, shaped into balls and plunged into boiling oil. He tells you he once cooked for a lord. Now, he sells snacks to peasants. Less complaining, he says with a grin, same grease. You laugh. And he hands you a ristle on a wooden skewer. It's hot, crispy, and dangerously addictive. You understand at once why the concept of street food has survived centuries. It's quick, messy, and joyful. Nearby, a noblewoman in absurdly tall shoes points at a platter of candied violets. Yes, real flowers dipped in sugar syrup. She buys a handful, probably just to say she did. Her servant eats one, grimaces, and pretends to enjoy it. That's medieval customer service. As the day fades, the fairground takes on a golden glow, torches flicker, shadows dance, and the smell of roasted onions mingles with wood smoke. Somewhere, someone is frying crispels, the medieval ancestor of doughnuts. They're twisted bits of dough fried in oil and covered with honey or sugar. Sticky fingers everywhere. You grab one, bite in, and feel the crunch give way to soft, doughy warmth. You can almost hear your dentist groaning through time. But it's perfect. Simple, sweet, and made to be eaten standing up. A local storyteller shouts over the crowd about the dangers of gluttony, but he's chewing on something fried as he says it. The irony isn't lost on you. In the Middle Ages, food and faith danced a messy waltz. People were told to fast and repent. But every festival ended in feasting anyway. Humans, it seems, have always found loopholes when the smell of frying oil calls. Somewhere nearby, a juggler drops a pie, and a dog immediately claims it. Laughter ripples through the crowd. For a moment, everything feels timeless. The laughter, the smells, the indulgence. You could almost believe that this same joy repeats itself century after century, just with better napkins. You wander toward the exit, hands sticky with honey, cheeks warm from all, and realize something strange: medieval junk food isn't really junk. It's survival disguised as pleasure. Each bite tells a story of scarcity turned into creativity, of people who refused to let poverty taste bland. And as you lick the last drop of honey from your fingers, you realize these were the first rebels of taste, frying their way through history, one dangerously delicious snack at a time. Hey guys, tonight we dive into something deliciously questionable. The kind of thing that smells amazing, tastes even better, and might just shave a few years off your medieval lifespan. You're wandering through a bustling 14th century marketplace, where the air is thick with the scent of roasting meat, spiced honey cakes, and a dozen other snacks sizzling in oil that hasn't been changed since last Easter. You probably won't survive this, but at least you'll go with a smile. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step through the gates of a medieval fairground, where chaos, laughter, and hunger blend into one intoxicating rhythm. Drums beat somewhere near the jesting field, but the real battle is between your nose and your self-control. Every booth calls out with promises of sinful delights. Meat pies bubbling in their own fat, fritters dripping with honey, almonds roasted until their sugar crusts crackle like tiny fireworks. The first thing you notice isn't the color or the texture, it's the noise. Food in the Middle Ages wasn't a quiet affair. Vendors shout, cauldrons bubble, and someone's chasing a goose that got loose from the butcher's pen. You dodge a splash of broth as a cook ladles out what looks like stew but smells suspiciously like old fish and beer. He winks at you and mutters, "Best in town." You nod politely. You're not sure which town he means. For the medieval crowd, this is paradise. Junk food isn't a guilty pleasure. It's a break from endless bread and porridge. Imagine being a farmer living on barley gruel day after day. Then suddenly, there's a fair, and you can buy a stick of meat roasted over an open flame. You'd spend your last copper just to taste salt and fat again. You pass a woman selling wafers, thin crispy discs pressed between metal irons with intricate patterns, sort of like edible stained glass windows. They're flavored with honey and rosewater, a treat you'd normally find in noble halls, but here, she's hawking them to anyone with a coin. Fun fact: wafer sellers were some of the earliest street vendors in Europe, often working right outside churches after Mass. And yes, historians still argue whether those wafers counted as dessert or as holy bread knock-offs. As you move deeper into the fairground, the smells grow darker, more roasted, more charred. Someone's turning a whole pig on a spit, and the fat drips into the fire, creating bursts of smoke that smell like bacon mixed with heaven. You watch as people tear chunks straight off with their hands. There are no forks here, just fingers and shared bites, hygiene, a luxury of the future. You try a chewet, a small pastry stuffed with minced meat and raisins, wrapped in flaky dough and fried. It's oddly sweet and savory at once, like a medieval experiment that went wrong in the right way. One bite, and you understand why people risked spoiled meat. Because life was short, and flavor was rare. Over by the owl tent, men dunk slices of fried bread into beer, then sprinkle it with sugar and cinnamon. This, apparently, is a nobleman's breakfast gone public. Sugar was still expensive, but a little pinch on street snacks gave them an exotic edge. Like saying, "Look at me, I can afford imported sweetness." A juggler tosses apples dipped in honey, and kids chase after him hoping one might fall. These candied apples are more like toffee bombs, boiled in honey so long they could double as weapons. And yes, sometimes they broke teeth. That's medieval dentistry for you. If it hurts, drink more wool. A group of pilgrims sits by the fountain eating something fried and golden. Fish fritters, supposedly invented as a loophole for fasting rules. They're crisp on the outside, soft inside, and served with a thick sauce made of herbs and vinegar. The church said no meat on certain days, but frying plants, nuts, and fish in oil didn't technically count. Hence, the birth of holy junk food. You can almost hear the monks sighing in satisfaction. Near the center of the fair, there's a booth run by an old woman selling pancakes. Not quite what you're used to. They're thick, uneven, and smell faintly of yeast and smoke. She pours batter onto an iron plate greased with bacon fat, flips it once, then dusts it with crushed sugar if you pay extra. The taste? Like eating a medieval dream. Sweet, salty, and vaguely metallic from the iron. You watch as a group of merchants from Venice haggle over spiced almonds. These are the true rock stars of the market. Imported cinnamon, cardamom, and clove made even simple nuts feel royal. The merchant explains that these spices traveled thousands of miles from Asia, more valuable than gold per ounce. Of course, he neglects to mention that by the time they reach your tongue, they've absorbed half the smells of the ship's cargo hold. Historians still debate how much of this market was about food and how much was about showing off. A pie with saffron wasn't just lunch. It was a statement that you were worldly, wealthy, and maybe slightly irresponsible with your money. A fiddler plays nearby, and as his tune lilts over the crowd, you realize food here isn't separate from life. It is life. Every smell tells a story. Roasted nuts for the lovers, fried dough for the drunkards, honeyed cakes for the hopeful. You see a mother hand her child a small twist of pastry dusted with ginger. The boy's eyes light up, like it's Christmas in October. You pause by a stall where a man fries. Rissoles, minced meat mixed with eggs, breadcrumbs and spices, shaped into balls and plunged into boiling oil. He tells you he once cooked for a lord. Now, he sells snacks to peasants. Less complaining. He says with a grin, same grace. You laugh, and he hands you a rissole on a wooden skewer. It's hot, crispy, and dangerously addictive. You understand at once why the concept of street food has survived centuries. It's quick, messy, and joyful. Nearby, a noblewoman in absurdly tall shoes points at a platter of candied violets. Yes, real flowers dipped in sugar syrup. She buys a handful, probably just to say she did. Her servant eats one, grimaces, and pretends to enjoy it. That's medieval customer service. As the day fades, the fairground takes on a golden glow. Torches flicker, shadows dance, and the smell of roasted onions mingles with wood smoke. Somewhere, someone is frying crispels, the medieval ancestor of donuts. They're twisted bits of dough fried in oil and covered with honey or sugar. Sticky fingers everywhere. You grab one, bite in, and feel the crunch give way to soft, doughy warmth. You can almost hear your dentist groaning through time. But it's perfect, simple, sweet, and made to be eaten standing up. A local storyteller shouts over the crowd about the dangers of gluttony. But he's chewing on something fried as he says it. The irony isn't lost on you. In the Middle Ages, food and faith danced a messy waltz. People were told to fast and repent. But every festival ended in feasting anyway. Humans, it seems, have always found loopholes when the smell of frying oil calls. Somewhere nearby, a juggler drops a pie, and a dog immediately claims it. Laughter ripples through the crowd. For a moment, everything feels timeless. The laughter, the smells, the indulgence. You could almost believe that this same joy repeats itself century after century, just with better napkins. You wander toward the exit, hands sticky with honey, cheeks warm from all, and realize something strange: medieval junk food isn't really junk. It's survival disguised as pleasure. Each bite tells a story of scarcity turned into creativity, of people who refused to let poverty taste bland. And as you lick the last drop of honey from your fingers, you realize these were the first rebels of taste, frying their way through history, one dangerously delicious snack at a time. The morning light creeps through the narrow shutters of a tavern kitchen, painting the air gold with dust and smoke. The floorboards creak underfoot, and the smell hits you before your eyes even open fully. Something fried, oily, and blessedly familiar. It's not sugar this time. It's dough sizzling in fat, fish crackling in batter, and the unmistakable scent of sin masked as piety. You've stumbled into one of medieval Europe's most peculiar contradictions, the world of holy junk food. It starts with a rule, because, of course, everything medieval starts with a rule. The church had plenty. 40 days of Lent, meatless Fridays, dozens of fast days throughout the year. For many, this meant surviving on fish, vegetables, and whatever could be disguised as not meat. But human creativity doesn't like rules. It likes loopholes, and those loopholes came deep-fried. In the corner, a monk hums as he stirs a pot of oil over an open flame. He drops spoonfuls of dough made with almond milk and flour. No dairy, no eggs, technically permitted. They puff up instantly, golden and crisp, floating like tiny halos. He scoops them out, drizzles honey on top, and smiles faintly. "God forgives a good cook," he says. You sit at a worn wooden table, the surface shiny from centuries of grease. The monk slides a plate toward you. The fritters smell heavenly, their sweetness almost mocking the word. Fast. You take a bite, and it's soft inside, crunchy outside. Comfort food wrapped in divine permission. Historians still argue whether the church encouraged or simply tolerated these treats. Some records suggest that abbeys became accidental pioneers of medieval gastronomy, experimenting with ways to make fasting days feel less like punishment. Others insist it was all subterfuge, a quiet rebellion of hungry monks with access to too much olive oil. Either way, the result is delicious. Around you, the kitchen bustles. A novice stirs a pot of what he calls pottage, but it looks suspiciously like a proto-fish stew, bubbling thick with herbs, onions, and something that might once have been cod. The air is humid, the windows fogged with steam. Somewhere outside, church bells toll the hour, but inside, the only rhythm is the crackle of oil. You learn that this little monastery has a reputation. Pilgrims whisper of its Lenten delicacies, dishes so rich that even angels would blush. There's talk of fried almonds, wafer, thin pancakes made from lentil flour, and something called mock meat, a mixture of nuts and breadcrumbs pressed into the shape of sausages. The monks laugh about it, calling it holy deception. And one of them leans over and confides, "Once, we even made a roast goose entirely from fish." The bishop never noticed. You nearly choke on your fritter. Apparently, this wasn't uncommon. Medieval cooks loved illusion foods, culinary disguises that turned one ingredient into another. A trout molded into a piglet, almond paste sculpted like ham, or dough tinted with beet juice to mimic beef. When fasting became unbearable, imagination filled the gap. But there's something deeper going on here. Fasting wasn't just about hunger. It was about control, about proving devotion through denial. Yet every bite of fried dough feels like a reminder that humans are built to seek comfort, even in constraint. It's a paradox as old as faith itself. You wander into the courtyard, where a few lay brothers tend to the herb garden. They pluck mint and sage, grind them with vinegar, and mix the paste into dipping sauces for the evening meal. Herbs keep the body clean, one says, offering you a taste. It's tangy, almost refreshing, like medieval mouthwash meets salad dressing. You watch as another monk pours oil into a copper pan. He explains that olive oil came from the south. Spain, Italy, the Holy Land. In Northern Europe, people used animal fat instead. Our brothers in England, he says with a chuckle, they fry in lard. More flavor, less forgiveness. Inside again, the friar at the hearth is preparing a sweet dish for the feast of St. Catherine. Little balls of dough flavored with saffron and anise. He insists they're not indulgent, just celebratory. He offers you one. The warmth and spice linger like a prayer on your tongue. You can't help but notice how lively this supposedly austere place feels. The monks joke, they gossip, they taste. The kitchen is their sanctuary. And though they eat in silence at mealtime, that silence is filled with gratitude. and the faint crunch of fried batter. It's easy to forget that oil itself was once sacred. In the early Middle Ages, most commoners rarely saw enough fat to fry anything. Boiling and baking were for the poor, frying was for the blessed or the clever. When olive oil did arrive from distant lands, it was treated almost like holy water, and perhaps that's what gives these dishes their quiet reverence. As afternoon turns to evening, the monks prepare for vespers. The kitchen quiets, the oil cools. You linger a bit longer, staring at the crumbs on your plate. A friar passes by, smiling knowingly. "Better eat what's left," he says softly. "Tomorrow's a fast day." You step outside into the chill air. Smoke drifts lazily from the chimney, carrying that same fried scent you know so well now. The sun is sinking over the cloister walls, turning the world gold again, and you realize that holiness and hunger have always shared a kitchen. You follow the scent down the path, past the stone arches, and toward the town beyond. Evening markets are lighting up, their fires glowing like embers in the fog. Vendors are setting out their own versions of fried, holy food. Some made with real fish, others with whatever they could find. The people don't care. It's cheap, warm, and mercifully tasty. A boy runs past with a skewer of battered eel, his face slick with grease and joy. A woman sells fritters filled with crushed apples, a poor man's dessert. Someone is frying cheese in oil, the smell irresistible, even if it's more curd than cheese. And you, caught between the cloister and the chaos, see the thread connecting them. The monks invented the recipes. The townsfolk perfected them. Religion gave the rules. Hunger wrote the loopholes. You stop at a small wooden stand where a weary cook offers you something new. A thin cake, almost like a crepe, filled with spiced lentils. "Lenten pancakes," he says. "For the faithful who can't afford fish." You take a bite. It's earthy, fragrant, humble, and somehow it tastes honest. He tells you he learned the recipe from his mother, who once cooked for a nunnery. They said it wasn't real food. He chuckles. But I say, if it fills you and makes you smile, God won't mind. You watch him flip another cake over the fire, the oil hissing as it hits the pan. Behind him, children laugh and play, chasing each other through the smoke. The bells ring for evening prayer, and for a heartbeat, everything feels suspended, sacred and ordinary at once. You take your last bite, wipe your hands on your cloak, and smile. Medieval people may have lived under strict faith, but they knew something profound, that joy, like hunger, demands feeding. The monk's voice echoes faintly in your memory. God forgives a good cook. Maybe that's why so many of these recipes survived. They weren't just food, they were faith made edible. And as you turn down the road, your stomach warm and your mind full, you realize that medieval junk food wasn't a rebellion at all. It was devotion served hot, dipped in honey, and shared with whoever was hungry enough to taste redemption. The town is waking up again, and this time it's not monks or nobles setting the stage. It's the streets themselves. You step into the narrow cobblestone maze of a medieval city, where the gutters run with rainwater, stray dogs patrol for scraps, and the air hums with the scent of food that's both irresistible and a little questionable. Welcome to the world of street food before anyone had discovered soap. It's early morning, and vendors are already setting up along the market square. Wooden carts creak into place. Pots clang. Fires roar to life. Someone is ladling porridge into clay bowls. Another is roasting onions until they blacken around the edges. There's a baker shouting over the din, "Offering hot pasties and pies!" in an accent so thick it's practically medieval itself. And the smell, the smell, is an orchestra of fat, smoke, and yeast. You weave through the chaos, watching as the first customers arrive: farmers, porters, dockhands, women balancing baskets of laundry, and even a few sleepy-eyed students from the local monastery school. Everyone's here for one thing. Breakfast that can be eaten with one hand. You stop at a cart where a woman in a suit, stained apron flips something that looks like an oversized dumpling. She splits one open with a knife, and steam curls upward, carrying the aroma of meat, onions and pepper. Hot pie, she offers. You nod, and she wraps it in a bit of parchment. Reused. Judging by the faded ink from some priest's sermon, you bite in, and it's everything greasy, salty, glorious. The meat inside might be pork, might be pigeon. You're not sure, and you don't ask. Historians still argue whether medieval street vendors were considered respectable tradespeople or just tolerated nuisances. What's clear, though, is that they fed the working class when nobody else would. Bakers and cooks with scraps, widows with frying pans, children selling roasted nuts. They made up the first fast food ecosystem. And in cities like London, Paris, and Bruges, they were as vital as the taverns. You duck under a tattered awning as rain begins to drizzle. A man beside you fries small cakes in oil that pops and spits dangerously. He uses his bare hands to flip them, and his fingers look like they've seen better centuries. Onion pancakes, he says proudly, filling and cheap. He drops one into your palm, and the smell is instant comfort. Crispy edges, soft middle, just enough char to taste the street itself. You chew slowly, trying not to think about where the oil came from. Animal fat, reused for days. Still, your stomach doesn't care. It's warm, it's food, it's survival. The same logic drove thousands every day to risk a few questionable bites. Because, frankly, everything in the medieval world carried risk. So why not enjoy it? Further down, a boy about 10 years old sells roasted chestnuts from a basket. He waves you over, eager for a coin. The nuts are blistered, cracked open just enough to reveal soft, sweet flesh inside. Best ones, he insists, holding up a charred handful. You buy a few, and they're smoky and wonderful, though your fingers turn black from the soot. He grins, showing a missing tooth. You'll be back, he says confidently. He's probably right. The rain eases, and you move on to the heart of the market square. A tavern door opens, releasing a wave of warm air and the yeasty smell of ale and stew. Inside, the early crowd is already drinking, dipping hunks of bread into bowls of something thick and brown. A man nearby tells you it's gravy pie, which sounds appetizing until you realize that means leftover meat, jelly scraped from the bottom of the roast pan. But you take a bite anyway, and to your surprise, it's delicious. Salty, savory, like the ancestor of pub food. The tavern keeper boasts that his recipe came from France, though it's more likely he just burned less of it. He ladles you another spoonful, and leans close. People say the streets here are dirty, he mutters. I say so are their kitchens. At least mine's open air. He laughs, and you laugh too, because he's right. No one's winning the hygiene contest in this era. Outside again, a cart vendor shouts about fish pasties, small pies filled with salted herring and herbs. The smell could wake the dead. You buy one and immediately understand why these were so popular: the salt preserves, the pastry conceals, and the herbs. Well, they try their best. You chew and feel your lips pucker from the brine. Still, it's oddly satisfying. Medieval cooks were nothing if not resourceful. With limited preservation options, they relied on salt, vinegar, smoke, and spices to disguise age, or worse. There's even a record from 13th century London of inspectors called pelconus and pie weighers, who were supposed to test food for quality. Spoiler, most didn't bother. And when you think about it, maybe it's better you don't know what's in your pie. As noon bells toll, the square bursts into new life. Bakers bring out trays of sweet buns glazed with honey, and a man pushes a cart of boiled peas seasoned with mint. Kids chase the smell of sugar, coated nuts, and dogs trail behind butchers, hoping for bones. You see a washerwoman buying fried turnip slices, medieval potato chips, and suddenly realize this isn't chaos, it's community. Every corner of this square hums with survival, with people feeding each other out of necessity and invention. The rich have their marzipan castles, but the streets have flavor, the raw, smoky, earthy kind. You find yourself drawn to a stall near the well, where an old man sells something he calls hot broth for a penny. He ladles it from a massive pot, bits of cabbage and barley floating inside. It's humble, thin, and surprisingly good. Been making this since the plague, he says with a wink. Still here, so it must work. You sip it, warming your hands around the cup. He tells you stories between customers, of bread riots, feast days, and a time when the city banned vendors for blocking the streets. Didn't last, he says, shaking his head. People need to eat, and no one cooks before sunrise. A bell rings in the distance, calling for prayer, but no one moves. Hunger outranks holiness today. As afternoon shadows stretch long, you wander toward the river. The docks are crowded with sailors frying small fish on portable griddles. They eat standing up, laughing, their faces slick with sweat and salt water. One offers you a taste. Fried whitebait with vinegar. It's crunchy, tart, and oddly addictive. Best eaten fresh, he says, or drunk. Judging by his grin, he's done both. Historians still debate whether medieval people understood food safety. The truth is probably not in our sense. But they understood taste, comfort, and habit. They knew which vendors made people sick and which ones didn't. And they kept coming back to the ones who didn't. Simple market research by survival. Evening falls, and torches flicker to life again. The same carts that served breakfast now serve supper. Steam rises, laughter grows louder, and somewhere a minstrel plays a tune about love, and bad decisions. You lean against a wall, full and content, watching the glow of the market reflect off puddles. A woman nearby sells apple fritters, their batter bubbling in oil. You buy one, and when you bite in, hot syrup drips down your chin. She laughs and hands you a scrap of cloth to wipe it. You're not from here, she says. You shake your head. Then you'll remember it, she smiles. The first bite always does that. And she's right, you will. Because in this noisy, grimy, delicious corner of history, food isn't just about taste. It's about being alive long enough to taste something. You take another bite as the bells toll again, echoing over the rooftops, and for a brief, golden moment, the medieval street doesn't seem dirty at all. It just feels human. Morning again. But this time, it's not the clanging of market bells that wakes you. It's the sound of iron striking iron, echoing down a narrow alley lined with soot and sparks. The blacksmith's forge is alive. The air is thick with the metallic tang of hot steel, wood smoke, and sweat. You approach the small stone workshop, ducking your head to enter. Inside, the world glows red and gold. A massive anvil stands at the center like an altar, and behind it, a man the size of an ox hammers a glowing bar of metal into shape. Each strike sends a shower of sparks into the dim air, lighting his face in brief flashes of orange. Morning, stranger, he grunts, barely looking up. If you're here to talk, you'll have to shout. The iron doesn't wait. He lifts the hammer again. Clang, 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 and the rhythm becomes hypnotic, almost musical. You ask what he's making. Horseshoes today. Always horseshoes. He gestures toward a pile of bent ones near the wall. No knight, no peasant, no cart moves without these. Then, lowering his voice slightly, he adds, sometimes swords too, but only when the money's good. The forge is the medieval heart of industry. Half workplace, half furnace of civilization. Everything that moves, cuts, defends, or tills the land begins here. Nails, knives, hinges, armor, all born from fire and sweat. The blacksmith, you realize, isn't just a craftsman. He's a magician who tames chaos into usefulness. He plunges the glowing metal into a barrel of water. Steam hisses upward, filling the room with a sound like a dragon exhaling. The smell is acrid, the kind that clings to your clothes. Don't stand too close, he warns. People forget. Fire's a friend till it's not. In the corner, an apprentice works the bellows, his face streaked with soot. The rhythmic pumping feeds the forge, keeping the coals white hot. Hell be at it all day, the smith says, not unkindly. Boy's lucky. My master used to hit me if the fire cooled. He laughs, but there's no humor in it. Outside, the world moves differently. The clang of metal fades into the background hum of the town. The ring of church bells, the creak of carts, the distant shouts of merchants. Yet you can still feel the heat of the forge on your skin, like a second heartbeat. The smith steps outside for air, wiping his brow. His hands are cracked, his fingernails black with soot. Been doing this since I was 10, he says. Iron keeps you fed, but it eats your years. He flexes his fingers, stiff and scarred. Still, better this than the fields. At least here, what I make lasts. You ask about weapons. He shrugs. A sword is no different from a plowshare. Same steel, same hammer. What matters is what hand holds it. His gaze hardens. But swords pay better. He leads you to a back room. Inside, rows of blades glint faintly in the dim light. Short swords, long daggers. Even a half-finished breastplate hanging from a beam. Each one tells a story. That one's for a knight who can't afford new armor, he says, pointing. That one for a merchant's guard who can. And that dagger. He taps a small, curved blade. For someone who doesn't want to be seen carrying one. You run your fingers lightly along a finished sword. The balance is perfect, the metal smooth. How long to make this? You ask. 3 days if the gods are kind, he answers. A week if the iron fights me. A crash from outside interrupts. The apprentice has dropped a hammer. The blacksmith sighs. He'll learn. Or he won't. Fire teaches faster than men. As the day goes on, more customers arrive. A farrier needing nails. A farmer trading eggs for a new hoe. A soldier asking quietly for something sharp and fast. The smith deals with all of them in turn. Each exchange a piece of a larger rhythm that keeps the village alive. When the noon bell rings, he finally sets his hammer down. You sit together on a log outside the forge, eating rough bread and cheese. The air smells faintly of iron dust and ash. People think smiths make things, he says between bites. We don't. We shape what's already there. You can't create steel from nothing, only from what's buried in the earth. We just bring it to light. He looks up at the sky, where the smoke from his forge curls like a dark banner. Funny, isn't it? The same fire that cooks your food can melt your home. He chuckles, then stands, stretching his massive arms. Back to it. The iron's waiting. You linger a moment longer, watching him disappear into the glow. The rhythmic pounding starts again, steady, eternal. Each strike echoes through the street, a heartbeat of the medieval world. You wander away, but the sound follows you. Past the carpenter's yard, where saws rasp and wood shavings pile high. Past the tanner's shed, where hides soak in foul, smelling vats. Every trade depends on another, every craft feeds the next. The smith's tools shape the carpenter's nails. The carpenter builds the wagon carries the baker's flour, and round it goes. In the distance, a church bell tolls vespers. The smith's hammer doesn't stop. Faith may govern the soul, but it's the hammer that governs survival. By dusk, the forge glows like a lighthouse in the gloom. Children gather outside, watching sparks fly into the air like fireflies. The apprentice sweats and strains at the bellows, his eyes wide with awe, as the blacksmith raises a finished sword, glowing like captured lightning. See that? The smith bellows proudly. That's what separates us from beasts.
We make fire work for us!
The kids cheer, clapping dirty hands together. He cools the sword, lays it on the table, and finally removes his leather apron. His arms steam in the cold air. Day's done. He murmurs, though the coals still smoulder. Tomorrow, we do it all again. As you walk away, the night deepens, and the hammer's rhythm fades into the heartbeat of the town. Somewhere, a song rises from a nearby tavern. Something about courage, love, and the sound of ringing steel. And you realize this world doesn't run on faith alone. It runs on fire, on hands that never stop working, on the sparks that leap from the anvil into the dark. Tiny suns that keep civilization alive. You turn for one last look at the forge, glowing like a beacon in the twilight. The blacksmith's silhouette moves steadily against the fire, tireless, ancient, eternal. The hammer rises again. Clang, clang, clang. And somewhere in that rhythm, you hear the pulse of history itself. You're awake before sunrise again, your stomach rumbling. The forge's rhythmic pounding from last night still echoes faintly in your head. But now the scent of roasted grain and yeast fills the air instead. You follow it, winding through the narrow lanes until you reach a cluster of barrels and laughter. An early, morning alehouse already in full swing. Inside, the room is dim and alive. Candles flicker on rough, hewn tables, and the wooden beams drip with years of oil vapor. A woman with strong arms and a louder voice slams a frothing jug onto the counter. 3 pennies a pint. She shouts over the din. And it's still warm. You watch a group of laborers gulp from heavy mugs, their faces flushed from the drink, and the fire crackling in the hearth. You soon learn, isn't a luxury. It's breakfast. Medieval water, especially in towns, is a gamble. Even ducks wouldn't trust it. So everyone, from toddlers to grandmothers, drinks small beer. A weak, slightly sour brew that's safer than water. You take a sip. It's earthy, cloudy, with a hint of malt and smoke. The taste is humble, but comforting, like liquid bread. The brewer herself joins you, wiping her hands on her apron. Brewin's woman's work, mostly, she says proudly. Men swing hammers. We keep him alive to do it. Her grin is sharp, her eyes bright. She gestures to the massive cauldron simmering behind her. Barley, water, yeast. Sometimes oats or wheat, if I'm feeling fancy. Boil, ferment. Pray it don't go sour. You ask how often she brews. Every other day. Beer don't last long, unless it's strong. She gestures toward a smaller barrel marked with a red X. That's for the gentry. More hops. More punch. They say it makes a man clever. I say it makes him loud. Behind her, a teenage boy rolls a cask across the floor, grunting under the weight. Careful with that one, she yells. Spill it and you're licking the floor clean. You laugh, but she's not joking. All isn't just a drink. It's currency. Wages are paid in it, debts settled with it, promises sealed by a shared mug. A drunk worker is tolerated. A sober one is suspicious. Outside, a group of monks pass by, robes swaying. They nod politely at the alawife's door but don't enter. You raise an eyebrow, and she smirks. Oh, don't be fooled, she says. Monks brew better than anyone. They just don't sell it here. Indeed. If you follow the smell of yeast and malt up the hill, you'll find the monastery's own brewery, where bearded brothers stir giant vats under vaulted ceilings. The scent is heavenly. Warm bread, honey, spice, and something faintly floral. For the glory of God. One monk says serenely as he ladles out a sample. And the comfort of his servants. You take a sip. It's richer than the alehouse brew, smooth, golden, with notes of clove and apple. One make 3 kinds, he explains. Table ale for the brothers, strong ale for guests, and medicated ale for the sick. Medicated, you ask. He nods gravely. We infuse it with herbs, rosemary, sage, sometimes wormwood. Helps with fevers. Or so they say. Historians still argue whether the monks genuinely believed in its healing power or just wanted an excuse to keep the good stuff flowing. Either way, it worked. Monasteries became Europe's first great breweries, refining recipes and preserving the craft for centuries. The monk sets his ladle down, smiling faintly. God's water, he calls it, though he adds with a wink. But it helps if you bless it twice. You wander back toward town as the day grows warmer. Workers on scaffolds sip from leather flasks. A washerwoman dips her ladle into a small keg by the river. Even children, their faces sticky with honey, take swigs from clay mugs of small beer. A beer isn't the only medieval energy drink, though. Across the marketplace, a travelling merchant from the east displays jars of something golden and thick, mead. He calls it the drink of poets and kings. You buy a small cup and taste it. It's sweet, perfumed, and dangerously smooth. The honey burns slightly as it slides down your throat. The merchant leans in, whispering like he's sharing a secret. Bees are the alchemists of the world. They turn flowers into gold. He gestures toward a cluster of jars. We add herbs, thyme, mint, even cinnamon if we can afford it. Good for love. Good for courage. A woman passing by laughs. Good for falling into ditches, more like. You hand the cup back, cheeks warm. Mead, you realize, is luxury in liquid form. A drink for special feasts, weddings, or daring confessions. By midday, the sun beats down on the town square. A group of builders rest under the half-finished cathedral wall, passing around mugs of ale and singing off key. One strums a lute missing 2 strings, and another drums on an overturned bucket. Their song is simple, half prayer, half drinking chant. Here's to barley, here's to bread, here's to keeping fools well fed. You clap along, and one of them offers you a drink. It's thick, slightly sour, with hints of smoke and fruit. Apple cider, he says proudly. Not from England, though, made right here. Apples keep better than grain. You sip again and realize it's almost refreshing. The workers grin, proud of their homemade craft. We press what we grow, one says. Grain for bread, apples for drink. Waste not, or the saints will know. There's truth in that. Nothing goes to waste in a medieval town, not even fermentation mistakes. If ale spoils, it becomes vinegar. If wine turns, it flavors stew. Even the dregs are used to feed pigs or thicken soup. Waste is sin, repurposing is virtue. Later, as the sun begins to set, you find yourself at a tavern by the town gate. The crowd inside is lively, louder than the morning alehouse. Traders, mercenaries, and travelling minstrels gather around rough tables, swapping coins and lies in equal measure. The tavern keeper pours from a large barrel behind the counter, humming tunelessly. This one's new, he says as he fills your mug. Brought from Flanders. Dark as sin, smooth as confession. You raise the mug. The liquid is indeed dark, almost black, with a caramel scent. The taste is deep and bitter, like roasted grain and secrets. Too strong? The keeper asks with a grin. You shake your head. Too honest. He laughs. That's how you know it's good. As you drink, 2 men argue nearby about a new brew from the south. One swears it's made with hops, a plant that gives bitterness and keeps beer fresh longer. The other scoffs. Hops, that's witchcraft. Beer's meant to spoil. Historians still debate exactly when hops became common in medieval brewing, but by the late Middle Ages, the argument was real. Hopped beer lasted longer, travelled farther, and tasted sharper. Some loved it. Others called it the devil's herb. You finish your mug and lean back, the warmth of the drink spreading through your limbs. Around you, laughter grows louder, songs sloppier, and the tavern air thickens with smoke and humanity. The alewife from earlier passes by, carrying a jug and smirking when she spots you. Told you, didn't I? She says. Keeps the world turning. Bread feeds the body, beer feeds the spirit. Outside, Night deepens. The streets shimmer with lantern light reflecting off puddles. Somewhere, a cart rattles by, its driver half asleep and half drunk. You walk slowly through the cool air, the hum of the tavern fading behind you. You pass a group of pilgrims resting by the roadside, their cloaks damp with dew. One strums a harp softly, another shares a flask. To the road, they whisper, raising it. And to good company. You nod, sharing their quiet toast. The air smells faintly of yeast, of malt and smoke, the scent of life in liquid form. You realize, as you settle under the stars, that medieval people didn't just drink to forget. They drank to survive, to hydrate, to celebrate, to connect. A mug of ale was a shared heartbeat, a moment of warmth in a cold world. And maybe, just maybe, a medieval morning without beer would have felt as impossible as a modern one without coffee. It's late morning now, and your head's still pleasantly heavy from last night's ale. The air outside the tavern smells of roasting grain and wet cobblestones. A cart rattles past loaded with sacks stamped Piper Nigrum, pepper. The driver flicks his reins and shouts, "Worth more than gold." You follow, curious, and soon find yourself in a small spice shop that looks more like a treasure vault than a grocer's stall. Inside, jars crowd every shelf. Red threads of saffron, pale curls of cinnamon, black lumps of pepper, brown nutmeg like polished stones. The air is thick, warm, dizzying. Careful breathing too deep. The merchant warns with a grin. Smell alone costs you a penny. You lean closer to a mound of peppercorns. They look innocent enough. Tiny, wrinkled berries. But the merchant lifts one proudly. "This," he says, "travels farther than most kings. From India by camel, by ship, by miracle." You imagine that journey through monsoon jungles, across deserts, past pirates and plague. No wonder each grain carries the price of a small sin. A housewife enters, clutching a handful of coins. "Just a pinch," she pleads. "My husband's master dines tonight." The merchant weighs out 3 peppercorns, literally 3, and wraps them like jewels. When she leaves, he winks. Half of Europe's cooking with dust. They grind pebbles, burnt bread, even mouse droppings. But I sell the real thing. Historians still argue whether the average medieval kitchen truly used spices daily, or whether most of these scents stayed locked in aristocratic cupboards. Either way, you realize spices weren't only flavor, they were performance. You step outside again and follow your nose to the market kitchens. A noble's cook is ladling something from a copper pot into wooden bowls. "Tasters first!" he barks. 2 boys sniff, sip, nod. Safe. The cook beckons you closer. Try it. Stewed pears in wine clove, ginger, and a whisper of sugar. You take a spoonful, sweet, sharp, thrilling. It tastes like wealth pretending to be virtue. "Too much spice," he mutters anyway, frowning. "My lord wants to show off his trade routes. He'll taste nothing but pepper tonight." He gestures at another pot bubbling over. "We call that pottage for the staff. Turnips, barley, maybe a bone. No pepper needed." He chuckles. They wouldn't know the difference. You move on toward the fairground stalls, where poorer townsfolk chase flavor their own way. A vendor grinds mustard seed with vinegar and honey, pounding it into a bright yellow paste.
Hotter than sin,
he calls. You dip a fingertip. It burns your tongue and clears your head. "That," he says proudly, "is our pepper." Another woman sprinkles dried herbs, sage, thyme, garlic, over roasted onions. "No spices from ships here," she laughs. "The garden's free." Her hands move fast, shaking salt from a pouch tied to her belt. Salt, after all, is the true backbone of taste and preservation, mined, traded, and taxed like treasure. Without salt, she adds, the world rots. In the square, 2 monks argue good-naturedly beside their spice stall. One insists cinnamon cures melancholy, the other swears it stirs sinful thoughts. They finally agree to sell both sides of the story for double the price. By noon the heat thickens, and the air hums with cooking smoke and the spice-scented breath of the crowd. You sit beneath a canvas awning chewing, a bit of bread rubbed with garlic oil. Across the street, a troop of jesters juggles bright sachets of saffron and pepper for laughs. A child sneezes violently. Everyone cheers. Spice fever isn't just culinary, it's contagious. In manor kitchens, recipes swell with ingredients never meant to meet: fish soaked in almond milk, apples baked with beef, goose glazed in sugar and rosewater. One chronicler called such feasts a masquerade upon the tongue. Another warned that too much pepper could heat the humours and drive a man to madness. You recall an old tale told at the alehouse the night before: a merchant so addicted to cinnamon that he sniffed it daily until his nose bled gold. Everyone laughed, but the moral was clear: luxury tempts, then consumes. As evening falls, you join a banquet on the edge of town. The hall blazes with candles. The tables groan under trenchers of spiced meats and coloured sauces. A minstrel sings of distant lands where nutmeg grows on cliffs and cloves bloom from the sea. Servants carry in a pie so fragrant it could wake the dead. When they cut it open, live birds fly out, their feathers perfumed. The guests roar with delight. You taste a bite of the pie's crust, sweet, peppery, oddly numbing. The hostess beams. Imported from Venice, she whispers. The recipe, not the birds. Around you, laughter rises, goblets clink, perfumes of cinnamon and sweat mingle. You realize how much of medieval indulgence isn't about hunger at all. It's about control. To flavor what nature gave you. To rewrite the earth's plain taste with something foreign and fiery. Felt like victory over the ordinary. Later, outside under the stars, you lick your fingers and still taste the spice. The air is cooler now, carrying the scent of hearth smoke and faraway ships unloading their fragrant cargo. You think of the farmer grinding mustard, the merchant counting coins, the cook adding one last pinch for pride. Somewhere behind you, the banquet roars on, full of heat and laughter. You smile to yourself, knowing that tomorrow those same noble bellies will ache. And yet, by supper, they'll crave the burn again. The sin of over-spice, you decide, isn't gluttony. It's forgetting what simple food ever tasted like. The bells ring out across the square, but today their sound is different. Wild, festive, almost mischievous. You follow the noise toward a whirl of colours and laughter spilling from every alley. Banners ripple overhead, drums thud in rhythm, and the smell of frying dough, roasting meat, and melted butter fills the cold air. It's Shrovetide, carnival season. The last great feast before Lent, the church's long weeks of restraint and repentance. And you, lucky wanderer, have stumbled straight into the medieval world's loudest cheat day. The crowd presses close, thick with costumes and masks. A man dressed as a pig dances on a barrel, while a woman in angel wings shouts, "Eat now. Confess later!" Children chase after a juggler tossing golden pancakes through the air. One lands splat on the cobblestones, and a pack of dogs claims it instantly. You weave through it all, laughing, hungry. A friar's stall hisses beside you. He's dunking spoonfuls of batter into bubbling oil, turning out fritters dusted with honey and almonds. The smell is irresistible. "Fasting starts tomorrow," he bellows.
So tonight, forget your soul and feed your stomach!
You buy one, bite in, and nearly burn your tongue. The inside's creamy, spiced with nutmeg and clove. It's sinful in all the right ways. Fried food is the heart of carnival. Oil is expensive, so when it flows, it's celebration incarnate. Peasants save drippings for weeks, just to make donuts or meat fritters for this day. The friar winks. Tomorrow the church takes your butter, your meat, your eggs. Tonight, we make sure none go to waste. Historians still argue whether these feasts were rebellion or release. Did the people mock the church by gorging themselves before fasting? Or did the clergy quietly approve, knowing hunger's easier to bear after indulgence? A bell tolls again, drowned out by laughter. Across the square, a huge table groans under platters of roast goose, pies stuffed with apples and raisins, and bowls of steaming porridge crowned with melted butter. A man in a bishop's hat, clearly fake, climbs atop the table and declares himself Pope of Fools. The crowd cheers as he blesses a jug of ale and immediately drinks it dry. You're handed a wooden cup by a stranger in a feathered mask.
"To sin and supper!"
She cries. The drink tastes like cinnamon and mischief. Nearby, a troop of monks with painted beards march in a line, chanting mock prayers for Our Lady of Pancakes. Each carries a ladle instead of a cross. Children follow, giggling, collecting bits of fried dough tossed from baskets. The air smells of sugar, yeast, and rebellion. You move with the tide of people toward the edge of the square, where a massive bonfire roars. Skewers of meat sizzle around it. Pork, rabbit, even eel. A young boy turns one carefully, his face bright with pride. Father says the saints forgive on feast days. He tells you, as long as you mean it tomorrow. He grins, teeth sticky with glaze. You take a skewer for yourself. Charred, smoky, glazed with honey and vinegar. The fat drips down your chin as you bite. Perfect, you murmur. He nods solemnly. It's my mother's recipe. She says flavors proof God loves us. A band strikes up. Pipes, drums, a hurdy-gurdy whining through the smoke. Couples dance in circles, skirts twirling, mugs sloshing. A dog darts between their feet, chasing a piece of sausage. The music rises faster, wilder. Someone shoves a pie into your hands. It's steaming, flaky, filled with minced fruit, nuts, and meat all muddled together. You take a bite. Sweet, savory, confusingly delightful. That's mincemeat. The baker shouts proudly. The devil's own dessert. A scholar sitting nearby, looking scandalized, mutters, too many spices, too much sugar. The humors will riot. Then, with a guilty glance, he takes another bite. The night thickens. The carnival grows rowdier. Masked figures dance around the fire, shadows leaping up the walls. A group of men roll a barrel through the crowd, singing about oil and absolution. You catch the refrain, eat what you can, drink while it's near, for fasting comes soon, and so does fear. The irony isn't lost on you. Tomorrow, these same people will kneel in church, confessing gluttony, promising restraint. But tonight, they're gloriously, unapologetically human. You wander toward the outskirts of the festival, where vendors sell stranger treats, candied nuts rolled in rose syrup, fritters stuffed with cheese, fried apples sprinkled with salt. One man even sells sweet snow, milk whipped with honey and egg whites until it resembles ice. A winter dream, he calls it, before the ashes fall. A pair of monks watch from a distance, their expressions unreadable. The Lord's work is mysterious, one murmurs. Perhaps laughter is a kind of prayer. The other snorts, or temptation. Either way, no one's stopping the celebration. Even the bell tower above the square seems to sway with the rhythm of the crowd. By midnight, the bonfire burns low. Smoke curls into the dark sky, glowing red like the inside of an oven. A final tray of fritters appears, passed hand to hand. You take one. The sugar crunches between your teeth. The heat lingers on your lips. Then slowly, the mood shifts. The drums quiet. Laughter softens. The Pope of Fools removes his paper crown and tosses it into the embers. Someone begins to hum a hymn. Soft, sorrowful. The crowd joins in. Tomorrow is Ash Wednesday. The kitchens will go cold. Meat will vanish. Butter will be forbidden. For weeks, the faithful will live on fish, lentils, and patience. But tonight, in this brief blaze of grace and joy, everyone's soul feels full. As the last song fades, a child yawns beside you, crumbs on her chin. Her mother wraps her in a shawl and whispers, "Sleep, little one." The angels forgive feast days. You walk away from the square, the sweetness still on your tongue, the smoke clinging to your clothes. Behind you, the fire crackles one last time, throwing sparks into the night. They drift upward like prayers made of sugar and oil. The morning after carnival smells different, quiet, heavy, and faintly of ashes. You wake to the echo of last night's laughter, still drifting somewhere behind your eyes. But the bells toll again, solemn now. The feast is over. The fast begins. You walk through the same square that overflowed with noise and fried sweetness only hours ago. Now it's scattered with crumbs, overturned mugs and half-burned torches. A stray dog licks the sugar from a dropped fritter, then trots away. The air feels colder, as if celebration itself has been banned. Today is Ash Wednesday, the beginning of Lent. You join the trickle of villagers filing into the church, heads bowed. Inside, the air is thick with incense and quiet repentance. The priest's voice murmurs Latin phrases, and one by one, the faithful kneel before him. He dips his thumb into a bowl of ashes and presses it to each forehead. Remember, man, thou art dust. The words hang like smoke. When it's your turn, the ashes feel rough against your skin, and the scent reminds you, sharply, of last night's bonfire. You can still taste the sugar in your memory, but already it feels like a dream you shouldn't mention aloud. Outside again, life resumes under new rules. Markets still buzz, but the offerings have changed. No meat, no dairy, no eggs. Just fish, grains, peas, and dried fruit. Even the bakers have scrubbed their ovens clean of butter. You wander to one such stall where the baker is shaping small, pale rolls. Ash cakes, she explains, smiling sadly. No milk, no butter, but a little honey if the priest doesn't see. You try one. It's dry, crumbly, but honest. Hunger always makes simplicity taste noble. The baker shrugs. Better than nothing. And we'll be grateful when Easter comes. That's the rhythm of medieval appetite, feast and famine, sin and forgiveness, grace and ash. Still, people find loopholes. They always do. Down by the river. Fishermen haul nets heavy with eels. Technically, fish, according to church law. You spot a barrel labeled Holy Sausage. A man grins as he opens it to reveal smoked eel links. God's favorite loophole, he says, winking. Historians still argue whether these Lent fish markets were spiritual obedience or clever subversion. After all, when the church bans meat, suddenly eels taste like redemption. You sit by the riverbank and share a meal of mock meat. Ground almonds and figs mashed into little patties. They're shaped like sausages, but sweet as dessert. Across the water, a group of nuns carry baskets of bread to the poor, singing softly. Even in deprivation, generosity fills the air. But Lent isn't only about food. It's about restraint. You see men turning away from taverns, women hiding their mirrors. The town feels quieter, gentler, slower. People start to notice things they'd rushed past before birdsong, the smell of rain, the rhythm of their own hunger. For you, though, it's the food that tells the story. You pass a cook stirring a pot of pottage, lentils, onions, leeks, and just a hint of pepper. Every grain a prayer, she says, tasting it. At the monastery, the brothers eat even less. Their supper is thin fish stew and black bread. Yet one monk catches your eye, smirking as he sprinkles something over his bowl. Imported spices, he whispers, for the soul. Another scolds him. Brother, temptation comes in many flavors. He smiles. So does salvation. You can't help but laugh quietly. Even holiness has its loopholes. By evening, you've walked half the town. The people move slower now, their faces calm. Children nibble on apples instead of fritters. The air is filled with wood smoke instead of frying oil. There's a kind of beauty in the emptiness. An echo where indulgence once sang. You find yourself at a small chapel at the edge of town. Inside, candles flicker softly. A woman kneels alone, praying. Beside her sits a loaf of barley bread and a jug of water. You sit nearby, feeling the cool stone under your palms, and realize something simple. Hunger makes everything sharper. The air, the light, even your thoughts. And just when you think the season will stretch forever, someone whispers the word Easter. The promise of feasting again glows faintly in the distance, like dawn beyond the horizon. Weeks pass this way. You move through villages where Lent takes different forms, some stricter, some secretly lenient. In one place, people bake tiny, Lenten biscuits, shaped like fish. In another, monks ferment wild greens to make holy relish. Everywhere, the same quiet patience hums beneath daily life. But even restraint can become a ritual of indulgence. At night, by candlelight, cooks experiment, learning how to make flavor out of nothing. They roast onions until sweet, mash beans until creamy, and flavor water with herbs until it tastes almost like broth. One evening, you're invited into a cottage for supper. The host pours you a bowl of almond milk stew. No dairy, just ground almonds and water, simmered with dates and cinnamon. It's humble but oddly comforting. You sip it slowly, the warmth spreading through your chest. Fasting. The man says, wasn't about denying joy. It's about remembering who owns it. Outside, wind rattles the shutters. The world feels smaller but kinder. A few days later, you pass through a monastery orchard. The trees are bare, but the air smells faintly of promise. Buds forming, waiting for spring. A young novice explains how they'll celebrate Easter when it comes. We'll bake honey bread, roast lamb, and crack eggs painted red. He smiles. We'll eat like kings and then start all over again. It strikes you. This endless loop of hunger and plenty, guilt and laughter, fasting and frying. The medieval soul doesn't escape appetite, it dances with it. At sunset, you climb a hill overlooking the town. Smoke curls from chimneys. Somewhere below, a bell tolls the end of another day. You take out the last of your ash cakes and break it in half, chewing slowly as the sky fades from gold to blue. The flavor is plain but honest, like silence after song. You think of the carnival fire, the sugary air, the sizzling fritters, and realize both belong to the same rhythm of life. Feast feeds fast, fast makes feast sweeter. As the night deepens, stars bloom like spilled salt. The air feels cleaner, your stomach empty but peaceful. Maybe hunger isn't punishment after all. Maybe it's just another way to listen. To your body, to the bells, to the centuries of people who once stood right here, caught between indulgence and redemption. And as Lent stretches on, your dreams begin to taste like what's coming next. Easter bread warm from the oven, butter melting on your fingers, the sweetness of forgiveness rising like dawn. The first rays of April sun slide across your face as you wake, and something in the air feels different. Softer, warmer, hopeful. The long shadow of Lent begins to shrink. Everywhere you go, there's a quiet anticipation, like the world itself is holding its breath before the feast. You follow the smell of yeast. It seeps from every window, every kitchen, every hidden oven. Bread doughs are rising again, rich ones, made with eggs, butter, and milk that have been hoarded and missed for weeks. The baker's apprentice you met during Ash Wednesday catches your eye and laughs. "We're baking again," she says. The fast is nearly done. The bells will sing soon. Indeed, you can almost hear them warming up. In the fields, hens cluck proudly, finally allowed to keep their eggs for celebration instead of donation. Children run about collecting them, slipping the treasures into woven baskets. "Don't crack them yet," one warns. "They're for dying." Easter eggs, in their earliest medieval form, aren't candy, they're symbols. The villagers boil them hard, then dye them with onion skins, beets, or saffron, until they glow like small suns. Later, they'll be blessed by the priest and shared, shells cracking like laughter. A grandmother leans over her pot, adding a pinch of salt. The first egg after Lent, she tells you. was the taste of forgiveness. You smile, and it's true. When she hands you one, still warm from the pot, the yolk tastes almost holy. The baker's ovens roar to life again. Sweet, yeasty scents fill the street. Easter loaves braided and glazed, buns studded with currants, spice, and candied peel. Somewhere, a boy shouts, "Hot cross buns!" The tune is the same one sung centuries later, but right now, it's brand new, fresh and proud. You buy one straight off the tray. The dough is golden soft, sticky with honey. The cross on top, made from a paste of flour and water, is just barely crisp. You take a bite, and it melts, sweet and spiced, the flavor blooming after weeks of plainness. Nearby, a monk distributes smaller loaves to the poor. Easter bread, he calls it, for those who have fasted hardest. Historians still argue whether the cross atop the bun began as a Christian symbol or a charm against bad luck. Either way, you're not complaining. The streets are alive again. All barrels roll from cellars, lambs turn on spits, and kitchens hum with chaos. Every household seems to compete for the most glorious smell. One woman glazes her roast with honey and mustard. Another bastes her fish in butter thick as cream. The fasting oil is finally gone, replaced by golden fat. You stop by a tavern where laughter spills into the street. Inside, a troupe of musicians plays on pipes and drums. A man with a jug of ale raises it high.
To the resurrection, and to full stomachs,
he declares. Cheers erupt, and mugs clink. You sip the ale, and it's like liquid bread, frothy, earthy, alive. After weeks of thin soups and pious restraint, it hits like joy itself. Outside, you pass a line of children skipping through the mud, singing.
"This is the day the fasting ends."
Their voices carry like bells through the fields. In a nearby cottage, a mother lifts a roast lamb from the hearth, the skin browned and crisp. "Christ's sacrifice and our supper," she says, almost reverently. You sit with her family as they carve the meat, and for a moment the world feels whole again. Everywhere, colour returns. The drab grey of Lent gives way to banners, flowers, ribbons. People wear their finest clothes. Even the poorest carry sprigs of green to symbolise life reborn. At the monastery, the brothers prepare their own feast. The refectory table gleams with candlesticks and loaves. One novice proudly brings out a dish called frumenti, wheat boiled in milk, flavoured with saffron and sugar. It's humble, he says, but golden like the sun. You taste it. It's warm, soft, nostalgic. Like childhood and forgiveness stirred together. Later that night, bonfires blaze on the hilltops again. But this time they're not mocking sin. They're celebrating light. The fasting fire has turned into a beacon of joy. The villagers dance around it, eating slices of sweet bread and eggs glazed in butter. Someone tosses a handful of raisins into the flames. For luck, sparks leap up, like tiny stars returning to the sky. As the night deepens, you find yourself beside a group of travelers roasting something unusual. Tiny round cakes filled with honey and herbs. One of them offers you one. Simnel cake, he says proudly. A feast for mothers and saints alike. The cake is dense, fragrant, covered with almond paste and small balls of sugar representing the apostles. You take a bite, and it's bliss. You've outdone yourself, you say. He grins. I didn't fast for nothing. The celebration lasts for days. Each morning brings a new wave of scent roast meats, sugared almonds, butter melting on warm bread. And with every bite, people seem lighter, happier, reborn. But behind the laughter, a truth lingers. Feast and fast depend on each other. The sweetness of this day exists only because of the hunger before it. By the third day of celebration, even indulgence grows soft around the edges. You stroll through the fields, past families picnicking on bread, cheese, and bright, dyed eggs. Children roll them down hillsides, laughing as they crack open, an ancient symbol of resurrection turned into a game. You pause to watch a young priest bless the baskets of food, brought to the church steps. Breads shaped like birds, fish, and flowers lie beside golden loaves and little bottles of spiced wine. The priest smiles, sprinkling water over them. "May your tables never be empty," he says. The smell of Easter dinner fills the whole town. You follow it into the evening. A group of villagers invites you to share their meal. Stewed lamb with rosemary, peas sweetened with honey, and custard thickened with eggs. You eat until your stomach aches and your heart feels strangely light. When you finally step outside, the world glows under the moonlight, silver and soft. Bells ring far away, echoing through the hills. A child nearby yawns, clutching a piece of bread. His mother tucks him close and whispers, "Remember, little one, joy tastes better when you've waited for it." You look back toward the village, warm lights flickering, laughter spilling into the dark, and realize she's right. The medieval world's rhythm of hunger and feast isn't cruelty, it's choreography. A grand dance between desire and gratitude, discipline and indulgence. And tonight, under a sky full of forgiving stars, the whole world dances again. Full, thankful, and softly golden with crumbs. Morning dew clings to the grass like tiny jewels as you step outside, your belly still heavy from the Easter feasts. The town feels different now, slower, dreamier, the kind of quiet that follows satisfaction. The fasting is behind you, but the taste of indulgence still hums on your tongue. You smell bread baking again, though now it's simpler, less showy. The grand feast has passed, everyday life returns, but hunger, that familiar medieval companion, never truly leaves. You wander toward the edge of the marketplace, where food stalls are reappearing. Farmers unload baskets of greens and herbs, newly sprouted with spring rain. The world smells of wet earth, onions, and hope. A boy waves a bunch of wild garlic under your nose.
Taste this!
He laughs. It's good for your blood after Lent. You nibble a leaf. It burns like pepper and sunshine. For months, people have eaten little but dried beans and salted fish. Now fresh shoots, eggs, and milk make their comeback. The baker you met during Easter stands needing a new dough. "We call this post-Lent bread," she says. "Less sweet, more real." She sprinkles coarse salt across the surface and presses her thumb in the center. It reminds us we're still alive. You notice how she hums while she works, as though the simple rhythm of kneading is prayer enough. Still, not everyone returns to comfort so easily. The poor remain poor, and hunger is a year-round tenant in most cottages. You pass a mother stirring pottage, again. But this time she adds nettles and a single knob of butter. The smell, somehow, feels like triumph. "We make do," she says, smiling. And when butter returns, it feels like a feast all over again. You sit with her and share a bowl. The texture is humble, the taste earthy. You joke lightly. "If Michelin stars existed, you'd have one," she laughs. Not knowing what you mean, but liking the sound of your amusement. Historians still argue whether medieval peasants truly starved during lean months, or if communal sharing softened the blow. What's certain is that hunger was a season like any other, expected, endured, even joked about when the belly wasn't too empty. You leave her cottage and walk toward the monastery gardens, where the monks are at work again. Rows of leeks, cabbages, and parsley sprout from the dark soil. A brother bends low, trimming herbs. "The Lord feeds us through patience," he murmurs, handing you a sprig of thyme. The scent fills your head, warm, sharp, clean. He leads you to a small shed where they're preparing green sauce, for supper vinegar, parsley, sage, and breadcrumbs ground together into a bright, tangy paste. "It wakes up the bread," he says. You dip a crust into it, the flavor electric after weeks of blandness. "Too sharp?" the monk asks, smiling. "Just sharp enough," you reply. Like life after Lent. The monastery bell rings, calling the brothers to midday prayer. You stay behind, watching sunlight spill across their gardens. It's strange. This quiet world where food, faith, and patience interlace like roots beneath soil. Later that afternoon, you head to the riverbank where fishermen mend their nets. One waves you over. "You missed the miracle catch," he says. "We had pike longer than your arm." He gestures toward a wooden tub where a few small ones still flop weakly. "Want to try? We cook them with mustard and wine. Rich man's fish for poor mouths." He laughs as he tells you that half the town pretends not to like fish anymore after Lent, but they'll eat it gladly if it's cooked in oil or vinegar. "The trick," he says, "is to make it taste like sin." That night, you share the fisherman's stew by the fire. The broth is golden, the mustard faintly sweet. The youngest fisherman dips his bread and sighs. "Every meal feels stolen after Lent," he says. "Like we're cheating, but God's looking the other way." You nod, savoring the irony. Medieval people rarely separated holiness from hunger. They lived both side by side. As dusk falls, music drifts from the village square again, but it's gentler now. No drums or shouting, just a lute and the low hum of voices. People gather around tables, set with bowls of milk, porridge sweetened with honey. Children dip wooden spoons, giggling when the honey sticks to their lips. You join them, taking a spoonful. It's simple but rich, the kind of food that hushes conversation. "We eat soft after Easter," an old man explains. "Let our stomachs forgive our greed." Someone chuckles. "And our souls." You smile, letting the warmth of the porridge melt the chill of the evening. Soon the topic turns to gossip. Who baked the best bread? Who still owes the brewer for last night's ale? Who claimed to see a saint's face in their pancake batter during carnival? You laugh until your cheeks ache. A young girl, wide-eyed, asks you, "What was your favorite feast?" You think for a moment. "The next one." You answer, and everyone laughs softly, because they understand. As night settles, you wander away from the square, belly content but mind restless. You think of the strange rhythm of this medieval year. Feast, fast, feast again. How it keeps the heart both hungry and humble. In the distance, you hear a night watchman calling the hour. The stars gleam like grains of salt scattered across the sky. You lie back on a patch of grass, breathing in the smell of hearth smoke and damp soil. Somewhere nearby, a baker's oven sighs, still warm from the day's labor. You close your eyes, hearing faint laughter from the village behind you. Tomorrow there will be markets again. New cheeses, early strawberries if the weather stays kind, maybe even honey cakes for those who can afford them. But for now, everything feels balanced. The world, like your stomach, has learned its lesson. Joy comes best in measured bites. And as sleep creeps in, you can almost taste it, the future's sweetness, rising like dough in the warmth of morning. A few weeks pass, and the air warms enough for dust to rise from the roads again. You walk along one of those winding lanes, past hedgerows budding green and fields beginning to shimmer with life. Everywhere, people are working and snacking, always snacking. Because once the hunger of Lent fades, the medieval appetite doesn't just return. It comes roaring back like a bear from hibernation. And so begins the season of street cravings and country fairs. Your nose leads you first smoke, spice, something sweet. Ahead, a makeshift market has sprung up beside the road. Bright cloths flap over stalls where vendors sell everything from ribbons to roasted chickpeas. The sound of laughter and clinking coins fills the air. At the first booth, a woman tends an iron pan over open flame. "Peas pudding," she calls. The smell is nutty and warm. You watch as she ladles thick yellow mash onto a scrap of bread. It's made from boiled peas, salt, and a hint of bacon fat. She hands you a portion wrapped in a leaf. It's humble but hearty, the medieval version of comfort food. Next door, a boy fans a row of skewered apples over glowing coals. Candied fruit. he boasts.
For lords and sinners alike.
He dips one into honey, rolls it in crushed hazelnuts, and winks. Try it before the bees steal it back. You bite into it. The crunch gives way to sweetness that sticks to your teeth and drips down your chin. He grins proudly. Better than fasting bread. You nod. Absolutely. Across the square, a brewer sells small cups of all for ladies. Light sweet, flavored with herbs like rosemary and meadowsweet. You sip one. It's floral, gentle, and just strong enough to make the air seem softer. Nearby, a man shouts over the noise,
Hot pies, eel or pigeon.
You wander closer. His cart is a masterpiece of grease and ingenuity. Wood, fired oven, stacks of pastry crusts, pots of filling bubbling away. He plucks one out with tongs and hands it to you. Steam curls up as you break it open. Inside, the eel is tender and rich, mixed with leeks and butter. He leans close and whispers conspiratorially, "We call this street sin." Then he laughs so hard, he nearly drops another pie. Historians still argue whether these early food stalls were tolerated or condemned by city officials. Technically, selling hot food outside taverns was frowned upon, but hunger always wins over regulation. As you eat, music drifts from the far side of the market, a fiddler playing a fast, joyful tune. A ring of dancers forms, skirts swirling, boots stomping. Someone shouts,
Make way for the gingerbread man.
You turn to see a baker with a tray of spiced cakes shaped like people, thick, dark, and fragrant. He offers you one. The scent hits first molasses, cloves, cinnamon. Made with treacle from the docks, he says proudly. Imported, taxed, and worth every coin. You take a bite, and it's like chewing on a holiday. Around you, the market swells with laughter and trade. Hawkers cry out their wares.
Roasted chestnuts, candied almonds, spiced milk.
Children run past clutching fried dough twisted into knots, while dogs patrol for crumbs. You sit near the edge of the square, watching the swirl of colours and faces. A minstrel sits beside you, strumming a lute and nibbling something brown and shiny. Want a bit? He asks. What is it? Fried lard pudding, he says proudly. The poor man's feast. It smells dubious, but you try a small bite. It's crisp, salty, somehow delicious in a guilty way. You like it, he grins. That's the taste of survival. Later that afternoon, you wander down the road to a smaller fair by the village green. Here, things feel looser, more rustic, less polished. Children chase geese, women sell ribbons, and men try to outdo one another with feats of strength. Food vendors cluster near a fire pit, and the smell of roasting meat mingles with the sweet tang of cider. One old man turns a spit loaded with something mysterious. What's that? You ask. He smiles. Hedgehog pie. Don't look at me like that. It's not real hedgehog. Just pork with herbs, wrapped in pastry with prickles of crust. He hands you a piece, still warm. It's surprisingly light, with a faint hint of sage. Named it for fun, he adds, winking. Gotta make people curious somehow. That's the truth of medieval junk food. Half the battle is temptation. Whether it's the glimmer of honey on your lips, or the promise of something forbidden, it's always about the chase between hunger and delight. As evening falls, the fair transforms. Lanterns flicker to life, fires glow brighter, and the owl starts to flow more freely. The crowd thickens with laughter and noise. Someone roasts hazelnuts in a pan and tosses them like popcorn. A woman hands out tiny fritters made from milk curds and flour, dusted with sugar. Angel's breath, she calls them. You eat 3 before realizing she's charged you for 5. You don't mind. A group of jugglers performs under a tree, their torches spinning gold in the night. The smell of wood smoke and fried batter wraps around everything, thick and nostalgic. Someone presses a mug into your hand. Cider with spice, they say. It's warm, sharp, and comforting. The medieval version of mulled wine. You lean back, cup in hand, watching the stars bloom above the fairground. The noise fades into rhythm laughter, sizzling, music. The occasional cheer when someone wins a pie. Eating contest. A young woman selling honey cake sits beside you. She offers one for free. For luck, she says. You accept. It's chewy, golden, sticky enough to glue your fingers together. Made with love and bees' mercy, she adds. You chuckle. That's the best kind. She smiles, glancing at the glowing stalls. You know, she says softly, people talk about sin and virtue. But I think food's just another kind of prayer. Every bite says thank you to the world for keeping us alive. Her words hang in the warm night. Somewhere a bell rings from the village church, distant but clear. The crowd keeps eating, keeps laughing, keeps living. You finish the honey cake and lick your fingers clean. The taste lingers, sweet, earthy, slightly smoky from the fire. Around you, the medieval world hums with life, proof that joy doesn't need refinement. It only needs hunger, heat, and a little sugar. By the time you leave, the stars are fading and the fires burn low. You walk back along the road, your pockets sticky with crumbs, your heart full of warmth and noise. Behind you, the fair winds down, but the smell follows, a ghost of grease, spice, and laughter that clings to your cloak long after the torches die. The road you follow leads toward a bustling town, the kind surrounded by thick timber walls and watched by sleepy guards. From a distance, you hear a hum that sounds like bees in a hive, but it's not bees. It's people, hundreds of them. The marketplace is alive. And this, you realize, is where medieval fast food truly comes to life. Forget shining taverns or noble halls. This is where workers, travelers, and wanderers grab a bite without slowing down. The air smells of roasted meat, all foam, and wood smoke. You push your way through the crowd and stop at a cart where a woman is selling what she calls tartlets of haste. She flips small, round pastries over a flat iron plate, their edges crisp and golden. Inside, they're filled with minced pork, pepper, and a little chopped leek. She wraps two in paper, made from old book pages, and shoves them toward you. Eat fast, she warns. The bailiff hates smoke. You bite one as you walk. The taste is hot and sharp, meat, salt, and spice wrapped in buttery bread. It's perfect for travel, no plates, no spoons, no ceremony. Down the lane, a boy carries a wooden tray hung around his neck. He calls out, "Hot rolls! Hot rolls!" He sells them to workers digging a ditch by the wall, tossing coins into his apron pocket. He's one of hundreds of street boys who live by speed and smell. A fishmonger ladles stew into small wooden cups, eel, onion, herbs, and barley boiled together. 2 farthings, he says. More fish if you bring your own spoon. You hand over the coins and sip the broth as you walk. The salt and warmth cut through the chill morning air. You can see why people love this. The quick comfort of hot food eaten from hand to hand. There are pie men who walk between the taverns, shouting like living menace.
Mutton pie! Rabbit pie! Pig pie!
Their voices echo down the alleys like music. Some even carry portable ovens strapped to carts, glowing embers under iron grates to keep everything hot. Further along, the smells change. Sweet, floral, intoxicating. A baker's apprentice sells small fried dough balls dusted with sugar and rosewater. Cooked in lard, kissed by angels. He swears. The queue behind him suggests he's right. A monk passing by buys a handful, tucking them under his robe. For charity, he says with a wink. Not all fast food is savory or sweet. Some is practical magic. In one corner, a healer sells hot spiced milk with honey and herbs. Good for coughs, she claims. And better for heartbreak. You take a sip. It's warm and rich, with the faint bitterness of crushed sage. Nearby, a tavern has set up an outdoor window, a literal hatch in the wall. Inside, cooks slide out bowls of stew and mugs of ale to waiting customers who never even step inside. It's the medieval drive-through. Except the only engine here is hunger. You notice a curious thing, how everyone eats on the move. Traders chewing pies between bargains. Messengers gnawing on salted meat as they saddle their horses. Housewives sipping broth through clay cups while gossiping by the well. Even knights, armored and proud, buy small loaves filled with roasted garlic and cheese. Food has become fuel, not ceremony. An old soldier beside you gnaws a strip of dried beef and laughs. "Used to eat like this on campaign," he says. "Now the whole world eats like soldiers. Standing, chewing, moving," he's right. In the heartbeat of the town, fast food isn't a luxury, it's survival. Later that afternoon, you wander into the back streets where the poorest live. Here, too, there are vendors, though their offerings are simpler. Flatbread baked on stones, thin soup, roasted beans. Children crowd around a woman selling something from a pot. "What is it?" you ask. "Bread soaked in beer and honey," she says. "The cheapest feast in Christendom." You try it. It's soggy strange, but oddly comforting, like eating warmth itself. As the sun sets, a line of carts prepares to leave for the next town. These are the true medieval franchises. Families who travel with the fairs, selling the same treats city after city. Fried fish, sugared almonds, even travel cakes that keep for weeks. Some bear little wooden signs with painted symbols. A fish for the friar, a red heart for the sweet seller. Primitive logos before literacy. A young girl helps her father pack up the cart. She tucks leftover pies into a sack, humming. "We'll sell what's left in the next village," she says. Folk never stop eating. And she's right again. As you watch them disappear down the road, you realize how ancient the rhythm is. Cook, sell, move, repeat. Long before golden arches or neon signs, there was fire, hunger, and the road ahead. A final vendor calls to you before you leave the market.
Traveler!
A meat stick for the road. He holds out a skewer, chunks of pork glazed with honey and pepper, roasted until the edges blacken. You buy one. He grins. Best eaten walking. You take a bite, and he's right. The sun sinks over the timber walls, the town hum fades into night, and you walk on. Your hands sticky, your stomach warm, and your mind filled with the truth. Fast food wasn't born in modern streets. It was born in medieval dust. The next town will wake hungry too. By the time dawn rolls over the next horizon, the sky looks like melted silver. You walk past dew, wet fields, and smoke threads from early chimneys, thinking you might have finally seen every kind of medieval food there is, until a new scent stops you cold. It's sugar, that sweet alchemy of the wealthy. You follow your nose toward a manor on the edge of the town. Servants hurry in and out, carrying trays draped in linen. A stable boy whispers, "A lord's feast tonight." Some fancy London cook come to show off. You slip closer. Through an open window, you glimpse the kitchen. A battlefield of flour, candied fruits, and glistening pots of syrup. At the center, a cook in a white cap pours molten sugar over a wooden mold. Slowly, it hardens into the shape of a castle. Turrets, drawbridge, even tiny sugar knights on horseback. Subtleties, the cook mutters. Food that's not food. The rich eat illusions. He gestures for you to taste a shard that's fallen to the table. You touch it. It's hard as glass, amber in the firelight. You suck it and flinch. It's so sweet it almost hurts. Imported from Cyprus, he says proudly. Costs more than gold dust. You watch him paint the castle with edible silver, and realize this isn't about hunger at all. It's theater. Medieval junk food for the elite was as much art as appetite. In the corner, two scullions mix a batter for fritters. Apple slices dipped in albata and fried until crisp. They dust them with sugar and cinnamon, the aroma filling the hall. You take one, hot and soft, the fruit melting in your mouth. They'll serve these between courses. One boy explains. something to keep the guests from dying of boredom. Historians still argue whether medieval people actually enjoyed such sweetness or simply flaunted it as a symbol of power. Some claim sugar was too exotic for daily taste. Others insist nobles grew addicted to it. What's certain is this: wherever sugar appeared, so did envy. Out in the village, ordinary folk made their own versions. Honey cakes, spiced nuts, boiled fruit. You pass a cottage where a woman stirs a pot over low fire. Apple mash, she says, smiling. Poor man's pudding. She pours it into wooden bowls, dusts it with crushed mint, and hands you one. You taste it. It's humble, tart, delicious. The secret, she says, is pretending it's royal. Later, you wander into the fairground beyond the town, drawn by laughter. Children run past, clutching sticks with candied nuts that glint in the afternoon sun. Jugglers toss apples high into the air, catching them in their teeth. Somewhere, a fiddler plays, and a dog steals a sausage from a stall to wild applause. The fair is a carnival of cravings pies, stuffed with plums, roasted chestnuts crackling in pans, and a strange treat called gingerbread. Not the soft kind, you know, but a chewy slab made from honey, breadcrumbs, and ginger boiled until thick as taffy. You bite a corner and nearly lose a tooth. It lasts forever, the vendor says proudly. That's why it's good for love gifts. Indeed. You see sweethearts exchanging heart-shaped pieces carved with initials. A medieval valentine made of sugar and spice. But there's a darker side to this sweet abundance. You overhear a doctor lecturing by a stall.
Too much sugar thickens the humors,
he warns. It makes the blood sluggish, the teeth rot, and the temper wild. A monk beside him adds, gluttony is a sin of the tongue. And yet both men nibble candied almonds as they argue. As night deepens, the fair transforms into something dreamlike. Lanterns flicker, musicians play, and vendors light torches beneath their stalls. The smoke smells of caramel and cider. Somewhere, a storyteller performs tales of food miracles. The saint who multiplied bread, the monk who baked without fire, the thief who stole fish from the devil's pan. You sit with a group of children eating sweet fritters, and one asks, "Do angels eat?" You smile. Only when they sneak into kitchens. They laugh, sugar shining on their lips. A group of travelers nearby share a dish they call poor night's pudding. Stale bread soaked in milk and fried with egg and sugar. It's the ancestor of modern French toast, and as you bite into it, you realize you've found something timeless. The human desire to turn scraps into comfort. One of the travelers raises his mug. To small joys, he says. You echo him. To small joys. Across the fair, a minstrel sings a tune about a baker who tried to woo a princess with pies. He failed. The minstrel laughs, but he died happy. Everyone cheers. Crumbs flying through the air. The night feels like a warm dream. Music, laughter, sweetness, and the hum of human appetite. When you finally leave the fairground, your boots stick to the sugar, spilled dirt. You look back once. The lights shimmer like candy in the dark. You realize something quietly profound: medieval junk food wasn't just about taste. It was a mirror of life itself. Short, messy, joyous, and fleeting. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolls. Rain begins to fall, dissolving the sweetness, cooling the fires. Vendors pack up, children scatter, and the smell of wet sugar lingers like memory. You walk away through puddled streets, your mouth still sweet, your mind buzzing with warmth. The feast fades, but its echo stays. Proof that even centuries ago, people sought delight in the smallest bites, the briefest moments, the golden crunch before the world turned grey again. Tomorrow, you think, maybe you'll find something savory again. Maybe you'll crave simplicity. A loaf of bread, a wedge of cheese, a moment of quiet. But tonight, the world tastes like honey. The rain softens to a drizzle by morning, turning the roads to silk and the world to a kind of gentle blur. You walk with your cloak pulled tight, boots squelching in the mud. The sweet aftertaste of last night's gingerbread still clinging to your tongue. The air smells like damp earth and cooling ashes. Somewhere far off, a rooster crows. The medieval alarm clock. As you follow the road toward the open countryside, the towns fade behind you, replaced by small cottages and grazing sheep. A woman stands by her doorway, stirring a pot suspended over a low flame. The smell of porridge drifts toward you. Oats, milk, a dash of honey. She waves you over with the kind of easy kindness that feels older than time. "Travelin'?" she asks. You nod, sitting on a stool by the hearth. "Then you need a warm belly," she says, handing you a bowl. You eat slowly. It's simple, smooth, and warm, like the first breath of comfort after a storm. "Funny thing," she muses, wiping her hands. "Folks spend fortunes on spices and pies, but nothing beats a good bowl of oats." You smile. Maybe comfort's the rarest flavor. Or she laughs softly. Costs nothing, though. Outside, a pair of children chase each other with bread crusts, giggling. The world feels quieter now, post-feast, post-rush, as if even the earth is exhaling. As you walk on, you pass shepherds sharing lunch. A hunk of cheese, an onion, a crust of bread. One offers you a bite. "It's all we have," he says, "but it's enough." The cheese is sharp, the bread coarse, the onion biting, and yet it feels perfect. Stripped of sugar and show, historians still argue whether medieval peasants ever knew real satisfaction, or if survival left no room for joy. But as you chew beside those laughing shepherds, the debate feels beside the point. You can see it in their faces. Sometimes happiness isn't about abundance. It's about appetite meeting the moment. You leave them as the sun climbs higher, golden light spilling across the meadows. Bees hum lazily over wildflowers, and you can almost taste the honey again, ghost-like on your tongue. The world is one vast kitchen, baking, growing, simmering. By afternoon, you reach an abbey where travelers are welcomed for a bowl of soup and a bed of straw. Inside, the kitchen smells of leek's broth and quiet gratitude. The cook, a broad, kindly monk, stirs a pot so large you could bathe in it. "Pottage again?" you tease. He grins. "Until the Lord invents pasta, yes." He ladles you a bowl. It's thin but hearty, with lentils and bits of carrot. "Some say our soups are miracles," he says, "for they feed everyone and never seem to end." He shrugs. "Or maybe we just keep adding water." You both laugh. As evening falls, the monks gather to eat in silence. You join them, spooning your soup slowly. The clink of wooden bowls, the crackle of fire, the soft shuffle of robes. It's strangely peaceful. No feasts, no fairs, no sugar castles. Just warmth, breath, and the steady rhythm of survival. Later, a young novice walks you to the garden. He points toward a patch of herbs glowing silver in moonlight. "Mint, sage, rosemary," he says. "They feed body and soul." You breathe in the scent, deep and clean. It feels like closing a book. "Food," he adds quietly. "There's just another way to remember that we live." You thank him and walk on into the night. The road unwinds before you like a ribbon. The stars glitter overhead, cold, bright grains scattered across a black tablecloth. Somewhere behind you lies the laughter of fairs and the hush of monasteries. Ahead, only the long hum of wind. You realize how far you've come. Not just through time, but through taste. From the smoky stalls of peasants to the gilded tables of nobles. From fasting to indulgence, from hunger to contentment. Every bite, every flavor, every crumb has been a story. Of survival, of faith, of joy. And through it all, one truth remains: medieval junk food wasn't really junk at all. It was life made edible. Hope on a skewer, comfort in a crust, rebellion in a sweet. You stop for the night under an oak tree, unwrapping the last piece of bread you've carried. You chew slowly, tasting the whole journey. Spice, smoke, sweetness, simplicity. The world hums softly around you, and you find yourself smiling in the dark. So now, as the fire inside your imagination fades to embers, breathe out. Let the centuries slip away like crumbs brushed from a tablecloth. You've walked through kitchens of monks, alleys of merchants, fields of peasants, and halls of lords. And somehow, they've all been chasing the same small comfort, something warm, something sweet, something shared. Listen to the quiet. You can almost hear the heartbeat of that medieval world still echoing. The soft scrape of spoons, the hiss of fat on iron, the laughter of someone sneaking an extra fritter when no one's watching. These sounds belong to them, but they also belong to you. Hunger and happiness have never really changed, they just wear new clothes. The scent of honey fades now, replaced by the cool hush of sleep. Your body relaxes, your breath deepens, and the journey begins to dissolve into dreamlight. Think of the bread ovens cooling, the marketplaces closing, the monks whispering their final prayers. The world folds itself into night. And if, somewhere in your dreams, you find yourself holding a warm medieval pastry, dusted with sugar and starlight, take a bite. You've earned it. Sweet dreams, traveler. The feast is over, but the warmth remains. Sweet dreams.